Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Moneyman Cam. We have another video for you all. We're just going to go through some of the indexes, and then we do have a few stocks that we are watching closely. And we will also go ahead and review the economic calendar for the week. So we're just going to jump right into things. Right now, we have the SPX right in front of us. And fortunately, we did manage to hold, albeit slightly, but we did manage to hold the daily 50 SMA. So we do think that there is probably going to be a high probability of a bounce tomorrow, and potentially we could see a green week. The levels that we are watching pretty closely are about 44.92, which was our previous low just the other day. And also, if we can hold that level, then we should be looking for higher lows and eventually a break about 4600.09. If we could do that, then we definitely are able to spot trend reversal and we could have a more bullish bias. Next up, we do have the NASDAQ. And so NASDAQ, similar situation. We did manage to hold the daily 50 SMA. Very, very good sign. So we are looking to see if we could bounce. Now, obviously, long-term trend is still most definitely intact, but many of the mega cap names, like the Apples and Microsofts, have been kind of keeping the market afloat. So potentially you could see that situation where many of the names that sold off, for example, in the fintech space, maybe those could start to potentially see a rebound and we could have the larger cap names maybe take a little bit of a break. So NASDAQ could go lower from here. I am watching this level pretty closely. It is around the 15,444 level. That was a previous gap resistance level. And I am watching to see if we can get a trend change here. Now, one thing to keep an eye out for is if we do break previous low, then we could be testing the daily 100 SMA. So again, trend would still be intact. We have a lot of room to work with, but we are trying to spot those trend reversals. Now, if we do manage to make a move higher, then I would probably be eyeing our previous high of about 16,097.56, just a previous day. And then that would make me a lot more confident. And again, similar situation, I would have a much more bullish bias. Now, it is a little bit more complicated for the Russell 2000 because we have just been trading in this massive range just for almost really since February. And we've just been going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then we briefly broke out, and then we just managed to come down with absolute vengeance. So this is a little bit more complicated. We did get a slight inside candle, if we could call it that. Bit of a bearish candle, but we did manage to hold and we did manage to make a higher low. So that is a good sign. Maybe we get a tightening range for a little while and then we get a decision in directionality. But right now, I would really just be watching individual small cap names rather than broader small cap names as a whole. And of course, we do have the VIX. The VIX, I mean, at this point is now not massively overbought, but we are definitely approaching overbought levels, and we are actually outside our Bollinger Bands. So this could potentially be a short if we get positive news. So if news is that obviously the variant is nothing to be afraid of, then obviously that's good for the market. If we get news that inflation isn't really as bad as it seems, that's probably good for the market. So these are things we're also going to keep an eye on. But for now, VIX remains elevated, so we have to be vigilant. Ideally, we want to see VIX drop all the way down below 20, right around the 18 level. I think that would definitely give a lot more confidence to investors to start adding the positions. So we do have a few stocks on our watch list. This watch list is going to be relatively short as well, similar to last week, because there are just a lot of moving variables and a lot of things just depend on broader market conditions. But the first one is actually BioNTech. Now, what's interesting about BioNTech is obviously there's been a lot of vaccine news. Moderna's CEO, I think, came out and said that vaccines may not be as effective. Stock took a dump for a little bit. but managed to rebound slightly. But BioNTech's CEO took a much different approach, and he actually said that the vaccines should be effective and they should be able to make a new one as well. Um, so definitely bit of reassurance to investors. And actually, we can see we did gap up on that news, and then we did come down quite a bit and retest that daily 100 SMA. But we did manage to actually break out here. So this is looking pretty nice. I do want to see, I am very curious to see if we could retest this previous high right here at 374. But one thing that actually really caught my attention was if we go to the 4-hour chart, this is potentially shaping up to form an inverse head and shoulders. So let's go ahead and draw that out. So we do have left shoulder right here, head, and a potential right shoulder here. The neckline on this, a little bit difficult to decipher, but I would say right around that 348 level, if we could break that. Sorry, that wasn't the best line, but if we could break that, then I think we can make that push towards 374 and then potentially back towards our highs around 400. That would be our next level of natural resistance. Disclaimer, I do have a position in BioNTech. I am swinging some calls, so that will definitely be interesting to see. I think I'm up about 10 or 12% on them right now. So I'm hoping I could get a nice profit on them. Next up, we do have Tandem Diabetes Care. Now, this is very interestingly one of the few stocks that had actually a really, really nice weekly close. I mean, oh, oops. I mean, it was a little bit indeterminate. Sure, many of us could argue this is an indeterminate doji, but I mean, look at how much ground it managed to cover. And not only that, I mean, we bounced right off of the weekly 20 SMA. Look at that perfect, perfect bounce. And we are potentially forming a weekly bull flag here. So this is something I'm going to keep an eye out for. Now, what I also do want to mention is Tandem actually has really, really strong guidance, I believe, for 2022. So this is actually a stock that the team and I are looking at going in long on based off fundamentals as well. And this could potentially be a good entry. So I was looking at the 2023 leaps, for example, and a lot of them are actually very cheaply priced. And not a whole lot of people know about this stock. So there is quite a bit of a low there. The volatility is not as high, which is actually relatively ideal if you want to go long on, say, calls. Now, obviously, do your own research and definitely check out the fundamentals for yourself. This is not financial advice, but there is a potential trading idea right there as well. So I am watching. We did get a break on the daily. Nice clear breakout right here. So ideally, I want to see us finish above that daily 20 SMA and hold. And if we do, I think then we're going to go back to 143. And then I am also watching this 146 level. If we go back to the weekly chart, we do have a little bit of resistance right at that level between 143 to 146. So we are watching that as well. So obviously, as I mentioned before, fintech has been taking an absolute dump. I would argue, besides some of those hyper growth stocks like Asana and Monday.com and Bill, fintech has probably taken just as big of a beating. So Square is at the weekly 100 SMA. That is a potential add zone. Now, am I jumping to add to my position in Square right now? Maybe. If we do get a stronger week, then I would definitely be looking at adding. For a lot of investors, I will say this right now: if you guys have like a 5-year horizon at least, and your fundamentals of your stocks have not changed at all, but they're just taking a dump right now, this is a time that you should be averaging in and lowering your cost basis on positions. But you don't have to. You can definitely just hold it and ride it out. There's nothing wrong with that as well. Sometimes the best trade and or investment is not trading and or investing. You could just wait. Nothing wrong with that. But this is something that I thought was kind of interesting. We do have support right around that 170 level. So I think if we hold between 170 to about 180, uh, then that will be a very good indication to potentially start taking a position in it or adding to your current positions if we could hold. So this is actually kind of an interesting one. So Apple, you see, I drew a little bit of this ascending wedge right here. Now, Apple has just been on an absolute tear. And part of the reason why a lot of these mega cap stocks have been doing much better is because obviously there's a lot of uncertainty in the markets. So investors want to kind of park their cash with an investment that they know is going to generate consistent returns. And obviously, Apple is, a $2 trillion company. They have an insane amount of cash. We could argue that they are pretty inflation resistant. I mean, people are going to buy their products regardless. A lot of investors like that, right? So on a weekly chart, this looks like a clear rejection. And, that's not the best candle. I mean, that is an inverse hammer. So that is kind of a bearish indication. And I mean, we are overbought. We are overbought on the RSI. But what caught my attention actually on the daily chart. This could potentially be a head and shoulders forming. So we have left shoulder and then the head, and then potentially, if we fail to move above 165.83, so around 165.73 to 166, if we fail to move above, then I would be looking at potentially a head and shoulders forming, and we could short this, yeah, either via shorting the stock or buying puts, and take it to probably, I would say, around the low 150s. That is a potential trade idea. Now, do I have a position in an Apple right now, long or short? No, but that is something I am keeping an eye out for. We do see a lot of these rotations happen. I mean, right now, the large mega cap stocks are the flavor of the market, but once we do see a little bit of a rebound and some of the other plays have gone beaten down, maybe we could see some people taking profits from these mega caps that have had a crazy run and putting it into those more beat up stocks. So we could potentially play a bearish position on these. And finally, we do have Shopify. Now, Shopify is a stock I really like and I actually don't own. And it's one that I've been wanting to own for quite some time. So this was kind of interesting. We did finish and we did manage to actually bounce above the daily 200 SMA. But what I thought was interesting is this trend line that has been holding since basically about March of 2020 was tested, and we did get a bounce off of it. So that tells me this is a potentially good ad zone. Now, that being said, there is a bit of a risk with this as well. Again, it has been selling off. I mean, we hit a peak of 1765 and then dropped and spent about 2 weeks. And we are trading below our daily 50 SMA. So that is something I would keep an eye out for, below the daily 50 SMA and below the daily 100 SMA. But if we do see these levels reclaimed and we do get a close above about 1500, then I would be more biased towards the bulls. But, if you are very long term on this stock and you want a position, right around 1400, not a bad ad zone. So that concludes the watch list that we have for this week. Let's go ahead and take a look at the economic calendar. So let's see. Oop. Okay, so tomorrow, nothing really going on. Tuesday, we will get information about the trade deficit. That is something that we will be watching. Consumer credit will also be interesting. Wednesday, news about job openings and quitting. Okay, that will be something that we will be watching. Thursday, initial jobless claims, definitely something we want to watch. And Friday, the big one, the CPI and core inflation. So these are two that I'm going to be watching. In terms of marking your calendars, definitely we want to watch Friday. I think there's going to be a lot of potential volatility there, depending on what is said. A lot of us who are in the crypto space, for example, know that the way CPI is calculated is probably pretty flawed. And then there's also the issue about how currency debasement, due to this inflation, is actually much, much worse than they say. So, the market hasn't been so kind with inflation news. So definitely that'll be something interesting to watch. But we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll get some coverage out on it if needed. Again, we're going to make sure to be following all of these events closely. VIX is above 30, so heightened volatility, just be aware. But also, as a contrarian investor would say, when there's fear in the markets, that's when you want to add it. That's when you want to be greedy. So potentially, this could be a time to be greedy and add to your positions. And especially if you have a longer term bias on your positions, then this could actually be a very, very good opportunity. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Take care.